So I'd like to introduce Glenn Morris.
Actually, we should go around and introduce everybody.
We'll start online. I'll call you out real fast and you can introduce yourself. Judy.
Good morning.
Jim.
Good morning, my partners over there at the chamber, Jim Cardell here.
Sullivan.
Delvin Chambers, Life Scene, formerly known as Family and Children's Service of Greater Lynn.
Audrey.
Hi, good morning. St. Mary's School in Lynn and Human Rights Commission, Lynn.
Lori.
Lori Kennedy from the Y.
And the other Lori.
Good morning, Lori Hamill, Campfire North Shore.
Megan. Megan, you're still muted.
Good morning, it's Megan from Campfire North Shore.
Hey, Megan. Lisa. Lisa, you're still muted? Or are you on the phone as well? We'll go to Patricia. We'll come back to Lisa McFadden. Lisa, or Patricia, want to introduce yourself? Norman, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Norman Abbott, Congressman Moulton's office. I hope you all are doing well.
Thank you. We have a phone number ending 7972. Going once. Brigitte Damon, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Brigitte Damon, CEO at Leo.
Thank you. And in the room today, we have
Ed Schatz from Clock Tower Development Corporation.
Patrick Deulis, Lynn Chamber, co-chair of Economic Development, Deulis Brothers Construction.
Christine Pierce, Columbia Insurance, Chair of the Chamber.
My name is Charlie Patsios, Linley Associates.
Adam Sherman, Brotherhood.
Ryan Newhall, Newhall Real Estate. I believe that's 7972, maybe Chief Archer. So his number.
Glenn Morris, co-chair of the Economic and Workforce Development Committee, and also chair of campus planning at St. Mary's.
Marilyn D. Simone, Head of Operations at PCU.
Welcome, everyone.
Good morning. You're very welcome.
John Michael, Outreach Director for the Office of Mayor.
All right. So I believe Aaron's going to be joining us shortly, but we have kind of two parts today that we're going to talk to. The first one is ARPA funding. We're going to hear about what's going on with that process for the city of Lynn. And then we're also going to hear from Aaron, who should be, as I said, on his way, regarding the comprehensive planning process for the city of Lynn. So would you like to take us over, maybe tell us a little bit about what's going on with it? I have the website up and ready for you whenever you want to jump over to that.
Absolutely, thank you. So as a lot of you may know, we've been going through an extensive outreach process around the American Rescue Plan Act throughout the city of Lynn. Where we are currently is we're taking actual specific suggestions or feedback from the community for specific projects that they'd like to see that money get spent on. Prior to this, we had done a phase where we were asking kind of more general category outreach. So what we've done right now is we've released 3 forms to the public, and if we could turn on the website at that point. There is a kind of open community suggestion form. That is for the general public, anyone who has any idea about what they'd like to see that money get spent on. They'd like to, see the roads get done. Maybe they have a specific road in mind. You could say, I would like to get, Merrill Ave repaved, or you'd like to see Berry Park be renovated. Whatever your specific idea is, this is the time when people can do that. The other, thank you.
Because the mayor lives on Merrill.
That's because I live on Merrill.
Well, there you go.
So here you can see the community project suggestion form, and I'll quickly show the form as well. we ask a lot of administrative information. We ask this information for a few reasons. One, we want to make sure that the work we're doing does reflect the city of Lynn and the population of the city that we're serving. Two, it is a part of the program that we can demonstrate to the government in a few years when they ask what we did with the money, that we were effective in reaching a broad population across Lynn. So we need to be able to track kind of who we're working with. And then we try to keep it simple. You can really just give a name to the project, what kind of project it is, and you can describe it openly. We try to keep it fairly simple for the general public. And if they happen to have a cost or timeline, they can submit it. The other two are for city department and commissions, or really any kind of attached governmental body for them to submit. Of course, the Lynn Water and Sewers of the world, that type of thing. This one is, as you might imagine, a lot more in depth. We do ask a lot more specifics here. While this form is designed for them to submit themselves, it is open to the public. Anyone can submit a form if anyone has an idea that they think the department should head. And the non-government, nonprofit project application form. This is for groups that want to receive ARPA funds to perform a project themselves. Again, here we do ask more specific information because of the nature of receiving taxpayer dollars. And here groups can anyone from local baseball team wants to do equip some of the kids for a season, or if a nonprofit wants to do an extensive program around food insecurity. It can really range across the board about what's available.
Money should be used for.
I'm sorry?
I think there was just someone talking, not muted.
So that's where we are right now. Before I go any further, any questions about this phase of the ARPA program?
What's the total dollar amount that the city is looking to invest?
Sure. So we've been in total given about 75 million from the federal government, and we've allotted 14 of it. So we're at about 58. That I say about because there's some we gave some money to the schools, we're getting some back, a little bit of back and forth there, but 58 million.
There was a question about, is there a way to download the forms?
Yes, there should be. If we go back to the main website, I believe under public outreach, community for materials for community partners, should have some downloadable forms here, and they are translated as well. These are the workshop flyers. They are going to put in downloadable and printable versions of the suggestion of all the forms here as well. So that should be in there today, actually. Any other questions? Is anyone that's in the chat? Is there a timeline? Yes, there is. So May 31st is the end of the submission period for all three of these documents. And at that point, we're going to move on to the next phase.
So my name is Charlie Patsios, and though I'm not here representing myself, I was asked to participate today on behalf of AL Prime Energy and Mr. Nasser Bussir, who's also a sponsor of Rashidi Ellis, the boxer, and the family. I believe this is to be probably one of the most generous opportunities the city is going to receive, at least that I'm aware of in recent times. Mr. Bussir, Prime Energy, is willing to offer to the city of Lynn, at his expense, not ARPA funds, a brand new boxing facility that's open to the public for the members of, I don't know what the age is going to be, but the kids boxing. I don't think I should be boxing. And he's going to build it at his own expense. He's going to fill it with equipment, and he's going to run it for a period of time. He's asking the city of Lynn to give him a parcel of land, which he will build a structure on. And for doing that, he will provide to the city at no cost the facility and the operation of it for a predetermined number of years. I think that's extremely generous. I don't know how exactly this can fit into that, but I would think that between this agency, this fellow right here,
I came too early.
Jim Caldell, the mayor's office, and others, that we can collectively put our heads together and come up with something that would be top notch for the city of Lynn. And for I'm sorry, my apologies. That would be, a tremendous step in the right direction for the youth.
Well, I have a recommendation. The Boys and Girls Club is planning phase 2 of their capital improvement. The Boys and Girls Club is currently running a boxing tournament. And they have a long history of boxing at the club. They would be a good partner if there was an ability to leverage some ARPA funding with your prime energy guy. Maybe work that into their next phase of their improvement.
I can't speak. I'm not here to commit anything other than to extend the offer for Mr. Bussier. We're both, we want to be more than just a cheerleader, right? So we can have the discussion afterwards. I don't want to hold the meeting captive, but
just to speak to that, and to, I'm sure other people may have other ideas maybe coming to mind or may come to mind in the future. The availability of using the ARPA funds is very flexible compared to most federal dollars that come down. This is the time to have those conversations, because we can try to make a lot of things possible. I'll also say to add on to that March or May 31st deadline, that we are closing this period at May 31st to move forward with the process. We don't expect that this summer, and when I go into the timeline, I'll talk about it, that we're going to allot the entire 58 million. So there'll be some kind of second phase in the fall as well. So if you have ideas or projects, or anyone has suggestions that don't really come to fruition before that time, there's going to be kind of a downstream opportunity as well.
Thank you. Any other questions from online?
Yeah, and then just to talk about that timeline for a little bit, we're going to be doing this process through May, as I said, into the summer. We're going to then kind of organize these ideas into a presentable way for the public, kind of give everyone a chance to give feedback on projects and see what the residents of the city favor in terms of, they like this project more than that one, and so on and so forth. And then we'll be trying to package that into a package that we can present to the council in July for a vote, and try to get this process moving. Like I said, there'll be further downstream process in the fall, but I think we're going to try to do the lion's share as much as we can in July. I don't think we have a hard number, but we're gonna see what projects come and see what robust package we can forward with. So that's the general timeline. ARPA as a project entirely, all funds have to be allotted by 2024. So that's kind of the final deadline possible, and then have to be dispersed by 26. And so that is the ultimate end of it.
Can you shed any light on what the first 12 million was spent on?
Sure. So the initial allotment of that 14 million was for HVAC upgrades to public buildings, a lot of schools as well, I believe. And this was, right as we got the money in the midst of the pandemic to make those locations safe for everyone to inhabit. And then there were some other expenses for staff, administrative staff. We have a compliance officer for ARPA to make sure we're doing everything, and that we don't get in trouble down the road with how we spend this money. Translators as well. we have a very diverse community in this city, and ARPA is a huge opportunity, and we thought it would be a disservice not to make sure that everyone has access to engage with this process. And then also some test kits for COVID we got or kind of right as we came in the administration and made sure we had kind of that almost a strategic reserve of test kits for cases kind of ticking up now. So kind of why we have it.
As you go through this process, how much question, concern, focus is there going to be on funding on running costs? You invest in product A, and then it has this on running future cost associated with it, that whether it be a park, there's upkeep, there's translators. Well, we brought them on, we're gonna have to continue to pay them somehow, or the money goes away in a couple of years. How much focus is there on being able to manage those long-term costs going forward?
Absolutely. That is something we are extremely sensitive to with this project. We are very cognizant of the fact that this is a one-time fund. This isn't something we're going to come back to. So I'd actually like to, as we released a matrix that kind of shows how we're scoring these projects that I spoke about earlier. And one of the factors we're really weighing is this project sustainable over the long term? I don't want to say we will absolutely, never fund a project that has on running costs that would continue. I think it's just got to be part of the plan when we do that it's accounted for the future.
Can ARPA funding be used to offset future costs?
Can you expand on that?
I'm not exactly sure the model, but for example, I'm just looking, I'll say a mortgage and on-running costs. Well, if we front load paying the mortgage, we decrease future costs. That type of, as a off my head example, is that type of something that we would look into?
Yeah, as long as we can justify the spending for ARPA and we have dispersed the funds by 2026, and it has that effect. But I think that those are actually, I think a lot of the projects we're looking at, we're hoping that we can have these one-term payments that have those long-term dividends.
That made me think of something. That is, so you've got this money for translators, and if you could take that same amount of money and you put it into English immersion, when the money runs out, you've actually got something with, you use the analogy, give them a fish, feed them per day, teach them to fish. So if we can teach them English, and they can then in turn continue and share that with others. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that instead of translators, you have instructors to be able to learn the language, and then thereby you can then continue that and maybe get them some type of a certificate to be able to teach English to others, even if it's very basic and introductory. English is my second language. My parents both spoke Greek. I'm a product of immigrants, so I just think it'd be, something that would be very, very helpful. And not that you don't create dependency, you create self-sufficiency.
I can actually speak to that and say there are a number of nonprofit groups that do work like that throughout the city, and those are the type of groups that could apply for this type of thing if that's the work they want to do.
I have a question. So how is the city outreaching to, let's say, the Hispanic population, but as one sector, about this? How are they getting the word out?
Absolutely. So when we launched this phase of the project, we brought on, so we have a consultant that's been working with us throughout the full ARPA process. We brought on an additional agency, Health Resources in Action. Their specific focus is to make sure we're hitting those populations that generally don't get this attention. So what we do is we have identified kind of where Lynn is as a population and where we've been effective in outreach and other places, because we've been doing outreach not just for ARPA, but for all kinds of things. So we kind of have some data on like how effective we are. And they find those gaps, and then their job is to, fill those gaps. So we have a team working on that specifically.
Just a quick note on that. I think just watching the mayor's office work this process, I think it's worth noting sort of on that topic that the rollout of Lynn's ARPA program has been much more aggressive in getting feedback from the community and from the broader community, and is just kind of looking at other communities, much more transparent in how project scoring and assessment is going to take place. But and that's a challenge because, as John pointed out, there's a short timeline to spend this money. $58 million in 4 years is a lot of money to program, spend, and then show the federal government you spent it aligned with their program requirements. So to put this much effort into the outreach and engagement and developing the framework by which projects are selected is a big task. And I think they've done it. I'm not a part of it, so this is not a slap on my back. This is just looking at other communities. I think Lynn is the model, frankly.
That's great. And Lisa, I'm going to pull your question. If you can just briefly talk about the public input process into the decision making, and what's the weight that you imagine the public receiving?
Absolutely. So the public input process is going to take place after May 31st. We're still doing some refinement on the exact format that presentation will happen in. But the vision is that the public will be able to see projects in a clear way that would allow them to kind of upvote the projects that they favor and prefer. So the public would have this period of time throughout June to look at these projects and select the ones they like. So that's how they'll be able to have that direct kind of input. As for the weight that input will carry, we've collected a lot of data to speak to the scale of how much we've collected. Other comparable cities have gotten 100, 200. I think the biggest I've seen is 600 survey responses. Ours was 1,700 in Lynn. So we are doing this at a different scale. So we have that initial category data. We have all the suggestion data we're going to get now, and then we're going to have another kind of third body of data from the upvote process. We're going to present that all to the mayor and the council for them to see, and then it's going to be their decision as to how they want to intake that information and what that weighs to them.
Got it. Is there anything else that you want to share? We have a second half of our meeting coming up, but I wanted to give you any last moments to talk about anything else.
I think the last thing I want to say is that the very unique opportunity here is both how much money it is and how flexible it is in the ways that we can apply this spending. We are hypersensitive to just trying to do kind of one-term strategic spending, but this is the time to come up with those ideas that maybe thought it would always be great if this happened, but it's always kind of been a thing that's kind of been out of reach. It might be in reach today. So thank you.
Nice. Thank you. So the next half of our meeting. Sure. Yeah. We have momentary administrative process, if you don't mind, Chief. We bring Aaron into the fold.
There should just be a PowerPoint down.
Perfect.
Right.
So, Aaron, while
Sure.
I'm getting this loaded, why don't you chat and introduce yourself and what you're going to talk about today?
Sure. My name is Aaron Clausen. I'm the principal planner for the city of Lynn. It's nice to actually meet all of you in person. I think we've been on a few Zoom calls, but it's much better for me to see you all physically. I'm here to talk a little bit about the comprehensive plan that the city is carrying out. We just kicked off within the last couple months. Scroll down. That's right. If you could go back one, you slide down a little bit. Yeah, it is the content. There you go. This is probably a little bit older of a presentation than I had anticipated, but this will give us at the very least, sort of an overview of what the comprehensive process is, what it's intended to do, and then like the ARPA process, we are really focusing in on public engagement and ensuring that as we create the vision for the city, that it's a future-based vision of where we want to be as a community in the next 25 years, that is articulated by the community. It's not a top-down process. It's really intended to be a bottom-up process to inform our as we move into the future. Give it a second. I will say that we have hired a consulting firm called UTL. They're a consulting firm that works in the space. They've done a number of master plans, comprehensive plans, Boston, Cambridge. I worked with them when I was in Beverly before I came into the city of Lynn. Their key kind of skill set that they bring to this process is their ability to engage the community in a way, in a complex topic, that we can receive information and kind of put it back out in a kind of visually interesting way. So if I can just kind of work through this. So what is a master plan? Let's see, this is all through. It really is a statement of the community's desires. It is essentially the vision statement for the community, what it wants to be in 25 years, as I already stated. It creates a strategy for achieving that vision. It is a very aspirational thing. As we get into the creation of that vision statement, you'll notice that they're very kind of high-minded statements that the city wants to achieve things like inclusion, equity, but it's important in setting that high standard so that as we develop the strategy and the objectives that underpin that, that's sort of our North Star. That's the vision that we're trying to get to, and that sort of reminds us of what we're trying to achieve in that strategic effort. And then once you have developed the vision statement, you have the strategy to achieve that, then there's an implementation plan. So how do we use our resources and tools like regulations, funding? ARPA is an example, but every year, I mean, the city's got over $80 million budget. How do we capitalize change to meet that vision? It's typically called a master plan. We're using the term comprehensive plan because we think it is more inclusive of all the kinds of topic areas that we want to get into. Mass General Law, chapter 40, let's forget the number, 41, talks about master planning. Massachusetts is unique in that it sets a very general standard of what a master plan should include, but then does not require it of communities, and then doesn't require that your regulations, like your zoning code, align with it. So if you're in pretty much any other state, we would have to create a master plan. We would have to update it every 5 years, and then we would have to certify with the state that our zoning code is aligned with the objectives of that master plan. Not in Massachusetts. They say, here's what you do, and then forget about it. And within a master plan, they do state there are a series of topic areas or elements that we need to include in that. So land use, economic development, open space, transportation, environment are all kind of the typical elements that we need to consider. Most communities nowadays are adding things like equity, climate change, and then arts and culture as part of that. So there's not a kind of hard line as to what the city needs to put together. We're approaching this. These are some examples of recent master plans that have been completed. It's hard to see in this slide, but on the left, Revere has recently completed a master plan that is very much kind of aligned with the requirements of Mass General Law. You've got your existing conditions, you've got your public outreach, and then they kind of sift through each element and address that vision statement in each element separately. Beverly, which is the one I was involved with, we try to turn that around a little bit, whereby we weren't really necessarily articulating the framework and the implementation plan around these specific elements. We wanted it to be some more comprehensive in that they are interrelated and recognize that they're interrelated. So land use, housing, transportation should not be viewed separately. They are integrated. They're integral to sort of the future growth of a community. So don't break them out into silos. Think about them in a collective manner. And then we added some things like, I think we added culture and historical resources. And when we were talking, just another kind of point on this, when we were talking about transportation, we frame it more in terms of mobility and accessibility, right? So it's not just about getting a car from point A to point B in the quickest amount of time. It's also about locating resources, jobs, housing close enough to the destination so you don't have to travel as far. So accessibility is a big component of that.
Do you envision that the Lynn process is going to be closer to the Beverly or closer to the Revere?
Closer to the Beverly, and I'll show that in just a moment. Boston, just to finish this slide, Boston and Cambridge are kind of further sort of reformulations of the Mass General Law model to kind of meet the objectives and the unique context of those communities. And all that's to say is that it gives us some flexibility in how we kind of formulate the comp plan. So our approach, we're breaking it down into essentially four different elements. An introduction, okay, where we need to communicate in the plan what it is, what it's meant to do, how it then sort of plugs into policy going forward. Vision, values, and goals sets the picture, the overarching vision that the city wants to be, the values that underpin that, and then the goals start to lead to the actual actions, the strategies that come out of that. Then we're breaking down the strategy into two separate elements: land use and urban form and infrastructure. And it's more of a place-based sort of planning document, whereby a lot of master plans will be very programmatic, services, programs that sort of frame the implementation strategy. Our focus is on more the physical aspects of future growth. And it has a lot to do with the fact that the city has been doing planning, has a lot of planning documents in hand that are still relevant, that are more about program, more about regulations that do with delivery of services. And so, for example, we recently passed the housing production plan. We don't need to revisit the housing element. We have that plan. We can plug that into the land use and urban form component or element of this comprehensive plan. We recently completed an open space and recreation plan. We've got a lot of data there. We got a lot of recommendations. We can plug that into and actually inform our land use and urban form element of the comprehensive plan. So that's why we're taking a little bit different approach in this planning process, because we have a lot of policy documents in place. Our key issue in Lynn is we've never had a comprehensive plan. And so most of the plans are either topic area focused or they're geographically area focused. We got a waterfront plan and we got an open space waterfront plan that sets a great vision for the reuse of the waterfront. We don't need to redo that. We need to plug that into the overarching comprehensive plan for the city. So this is intended to sort of tie all those elements together. So community engagement, there's a little bit of everything in the kitchen sink in our approach to getting the word out and getting into the community. We're moving beyond just public workshops where I present or somebody presents some information and we break out into work groups. We're looking at social media, utilizing social media, online surveys, surveying, tabling events. We were just at May Day this past Sunday with the tabling to get information on a survey that's just out there now. I can talk about it in just a moment. And then later on in the process, when we get past beyond the visioning piece of this, we'll have open office hours. We'll have opportunity for people to pop in and then take information out into the community. So the chamber, you could hold your own sort of working group where I come in and I just sit back and watch you guys do do your thing. We take that information back and that informs the plan. So this is just a quick graphic. I already kind of talked about this a little bit, but I would usually flip this idea where your vision and your values kind of set the tone. Everything else falls under that. This is just flipping around. Land use, urban form, and infrastructure sort of fill in the gap. We have we talked about the city staff, consultants. We will be engaging with the planning board and city council throughout this process. We have a steering committee it's a large steering committee of about 40 people. We wanted to be inclusive with that. It's a little bit been like herding cats, but the value of that is that the steering committee is a key sort of personal infrastructure to get out into the community. Everybody has relationships, and folks in the community have relationships. They have their social interactions that they have. They have the different stakeholder groups that they represent. They can sort of take and push out information and pull back information for us. So that's really the key for the steering committee, is to kind of carry out that engagement and connection to the process. This is virtually impossible for you to read, so I'll just say that really the steering committee was formulated not so much to sort of approve the comprehensive plan. It was really formulated to ensure that our process for engagement was being inclusive, was proactive enough, and didn't help us with the implementation of that. So it's a little bit different. Ultimately, the comprehensive plan needs to be approved by the planning board. We're going to be seeking approval from the city council. There's no requirement, but we feel that, you know, sort of the policy making body for the city should endorse the plan, the policy directed plan. So we will be looking eventually for their approval in this process. Timeline. We're a little behind at this point, but not much. The soft kickoff took place last fall. We started existing conditions. The soft kickoff included an online survey, an SMS survey over phone. We had over 900 responses, which is pretty good. Not as good as ARPA. A little competition here. We'll try to up our game for the next round. But really,
start giving away money. I don't know.
Yeah, 58 million. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. We didn't give any money away. So I feel like we've done pretty well. But really, that was really looking for sort of high level, like what do you love about the city? What are your concerns? What is the one thing the city should fix? Really, kind of very simple responses. One, we wanted it to be a 5-minute survey to take to lower the barrier of entry, but mostly because we wanted to help us at a very high level understand what are the key things that are at the forefront of people's minds. So that's then going into the second survey that is now live, and I can provide you all with a link to it, and would ask you to share out. In this first next step, we're calling it listening tour 0, and we're calling it 0 because we're trying to create the basis here. And this survey is seeking to get the kind of feedback to create the language for the vision statement. So existing conditions kind of go. We started that last fall, and we're proceeding through that. So existing conditions are things like, what is the existing zoning regulations? What is the existing land use, transportation, infrastructure, demographic, workforce information, all that stuff. Just a brief digression, one of the best things about a comprehensive plan, one of those valuable things that it can provide for a community is information. You know, I can tell you how many times I've written a grant, or I've had a new business or a developer want to learn about the city, want to understand either a demographic profile, what is a profile of a particular industrial sector in the city. You know, we don't have one place to direct a developer or a business or kind of reference in our grant applications to really tell that story. And so this is an important part of the comprehensive plan. It helps inform what our strategies might be, but it's also critically important to kind of tell the story of the city. And again, we didn't really dwell on it too much, but Boston's and Cambridge's comp plan, which I think we're going to try to emulate a little bit. The way they formulate the recommendations and the strategy is really through story, so that it's much more accessible to the average person, but also as businesses come in, they can really quickly read through the document, understand what is Lynn about, what is Lynn trying to do, do I want to be a part of this, how can I be a part of this? Going to move from this and say that now we're obviously into May. The vision value goals part of this listening tour 0. I didn't bring the right slide deck. I apologize for that, but I will send this to Colin to share with you, because we do have a survey that's available through Instagram. We've created an Instagram page for Vision Lynn, which is what we're calling this process. And we're sort of leaning on social media in this first half of the process to develop that value statement. We also have a project page on our Lynn Common. It's lynncommon.com. It's the city's planning department's project information page. You can go online there to get regular updates, view presentations that we made to the steering committee, and then also get updates on opportunities to provide feedback to us.
Just to clarify, that was lynincommon.com.
That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
I can. Any questions on that? Any questions for the planning process? How you can share things out? When you can actually start commenting on actions?
When can you start commenting on actions?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, our first, just before I get to that, our first public workshop will be held in June. We don't have that scheduled yet. It's more likely to be the end of June. And that will be kind of the more traditional public engagement opportunity where there will be a presentation where we'll offer up a draft vision statement, look for comment on that. There'll be sort of a quick rundown on existing conditions that have been collected to kind of set the stage. So it'll be end of June. That will be sort of the wrap up of the first phase of public engagement, this sort of listening tour zero. At the end of that, it's our hope we'll have a strong vision statement that people feel good about. The next step will be kind of building out the strategies that would fill under that. So that would probably be later this summer or fall of next year, and we'll be or this next fiscal year.
You both may want to come to our June 1st meeting. We will be having, as part of the meeting, Jim Boudreau from Hunneman Commercial, who's deals a lot with industrial and also office leasing.
Yeah.
And we've asked him to come. He does a lot of leasing in Peabody and Danvers and places like that. And so the question is, why not Lynn? And what does Lynn need to do to be able to attract the kinds of advanced manufacturing and food related and other kinds of companies that will help expand our industrial base?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that invitation, and we'll take you up on that. I think
Great.
one of the, as a side comment, and this gets back to this earlier statement I made about we have a lot of planning documents that have been sort of driving policy in particular areas, waterfront, housing. Currently, we're working with RKG, which is sort of a consultant who works in the kind of economic development space, looking at that very issue around manufacturing, life science R&D, life science manufacturing, and the opportunity to grow in that space. And the amount of data that they pull together is still raw at this point. It needs to be cleaned up, and we'll have a presentation to make on that in the next probably two months, I would say. Might be a nice follow-on to what he has to produce.
Yep.
It's pretty amazing what's going on in the industrial market right now. So there is some opportunity for this benefit.
One of our project types that we've done quite a bit is pilot plants for mostly for people like Arthur D. Little and Polaroid, which we're not doing much work for either of those anymore. But that's something that I would think that Lynn would be well placed for pilot plants for the biotech industry, because you develop a product, but then you have to be able to prove that you can scale it.
Right.
So you don't have to have the 100,000 square foot bio lab to create it, but you need that 10,000 square foot pilot plant.
Right. Yeah. You gotta test and retest. Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate that invitation.
You're welcome.
That's a great heads up.
I hope everybody here will come to that.
So this is just a quick, I'm not going to go through this terribly deeply, but just know here's links to surveys. This is an overview of the comprehensive plan. We are calling it Vision Lynn. Instagram, I think it's at Vision Lynn. I am new to Instagram. I just created an account just to help push this information out, and I asked my daughter, how do I use this? I'm still learning.
You don't have pictures of last night's dinner on it?
Yeah. I gotta take selfies, I guess, and then Vision Lynn by it. But my understanding, and I am sending it secondhand, is that this is one of the better social media tools for a younger demographic, which we really are focused on making sure that we younger households too involved in the comprehensive. Typically, what we see is the older demographics really get engaged.
You know, you've arrived when you have a TikTok page.
Yeah, I'm not ready for that. I'm really not ready for that. But I would encourage you, if you do have Instagram, please link up at Vision Lynn and share. Take the survey. There's a sign up on Vision Lynn. You can get updates regularly, either for all the projects we're working on or just Vision Lynn. And please engage. Tell us what you think. It's critical for us to actually formulate a plan that's going to be addressing your needs and concerns.
I think it's extremely exciting what both of you have talked about for Lynn. And this is awesome. I mean, you are building city pride, and this is what we, for a better word, you've lacked not having a city planner for years. And the last city planner was Clausen, it was a long time ago, but these are exciting times, and I'm excited to be, working with you or helping you or whatever the chamber can do for you. I mean, this is awesome.
Yeah, thank you for the offer. The number one thing that at this point, at this stage, is take the survey first of all, share with your membership widely, and encourage them to participate. And one or two friends. The more responses we get, the better. The more refined action strategy we can develop.
And I'm with you on Instagram because I got it just to watch my grandkids. So I asked my daughter how to use it as well. So. But you're absolutely right, because they're all on it. And what a better way to get the word out, to get them to join that page.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Aaron at this time regarding the comprehensive planning process and where we are?
Just a question, as the ferry boat returned to Lynn, an issue for the possible project under this plan?
Under the comprehensive. So, yeah, I mean, as we talk about infrastructure as a part of this planning process, transportation is front and center, and all the modes of transportation we want to consider transit. So rapid transit bus, commuter, the commuter rail and regional rail, that opportunity. And then as well as the ferry. I will note that's the Lynn Transit Action Plan, which is essentially a transportation plan that was completed in 2019, or I think it was 2019, finally signed by the Secretary in 2020. Lays out a fairly comprehensive approach from a transit perspective at addressing mobility in the community, and in that it includes things like the regional rail upgrade to the commuter rail, the 15-minute headways, the electrification of the rail system, so we have better connections to not just Boston, but to our region. It talks about better bus service under the Better Bus program that MBTA is advancing. But we also are continuing to pursue that ferry service. So it's trains, planes, and automobiles.
A ferry service from the Seaport District to Lynn, where you have a lot of biotech coming to Lynn, would be very useful.
Yeah, I think
I'm taking up Tom McGee's battle for the ferry.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the challenges we had with, I think, frankly, with the MassDOT and MBTA was that they saw that the ferry is a competitive transit option to the commuter rail. You're going from roughly downtown Lynn to roughly North Station, Boston. But to your point, there is actually, there is not a competitive route that would include Lynn to South Boston.
Right.
Which is very difficult, as you know, you try to take transit into South Boston to take advantage of what's going on the South waterfront, from the North Shore, anywhere in the North Shore.
If you can get
forget
in,
about it.
if you can get into that district, try to get out.
Correct, yeah, so would be a very kind of, not just a great way to arrive, but efficient way to arrive.
You mentioned that there's a lot of plans that you're sort of plugging into the master.
Yeah.
So does that suggest that we would be able to implement some of these already pre-existing plans, or are you envisioning while we have to complete the entire master planning process before we can embark on any component of the master?
That's a great question. And actually, I appreciate you saying it, because I should have mentioned this. Part of the second half of the reason why we decided to have sort of a streamlined comprehensive plan framework, focusing land use and urban form and infrastructure rather than each of those separate elements, was to avoid that very problem. One, we thought we could plug in these recently completed plans that are relevant, that had public engagement, like the Lynn transaction plan, like that's plan, but not be caught in a cycle where there was an interest to say, well, wait, let's not implement the recommendations of these existing plans because we've got a master plan we're working on right now. We don't want to do that. We know that there's some relevant actions that we need to take immediate action on from these. So that's part of the idea. So we're working through the mayor's office. There's like 4 or 5 different actions from the housing production plan that we're moving forward on. Lynn Transit Action Plan, there are actions from that we're moving forward on the open space plan, the waterfront plan. All of these things are active documents where we're seeking to implement, and we can do that while the comprehensive plan is being created.
How much of the master plan incorporates, I know this is a dirty word, regionalism into the conversation? I mean, the one I like to point out is when we buy salt for the winter, we buy salt, we store it in a location. Saugus buys salt, they store it in a separate location. Yeah. Peabody buys salt, they store it in a third location. I mean, we can go on and on and on. Yeah. Where in this process is the vision for some level of regionalization of some of these municipal services that are duplicated in town by town by town by town, and have a massive cost structure and land use structure in this whole area?
Yeah. This one in this plan, it's going to be easier to articulate that in some ways, because things like infrastructure, transportation, as we were just talking about, transportation infrastructure is regional by necessity. You can't, the transit system is not, unique and sort of only applied to the city of Lynn. So things like infrastructure have to be considered in a regional context. Land use and urban form a little bit different, but we do want to consider how are we growing in the context of the regional market from a housing and economic development perspective, industrial market as an example. So in many ways, it will be sort of an underlying discussion topic area that will mostly be informed by the sort of that existing analysis. I think some of the more sort of operational elements, like where do we store salt, that might be, we'll have to be more intentional about that. How do we kind of use regionalization to
you might do that.
Yeah. I mean, we're just going through the process. I wonder where in the process is the conversation of where are these regionalization opportunities? Yeah, I just didn't know. I didn't see where that question was asked.
Yeah, sometimes the comprehensive plan is a 30,000 foot view. So you're going to get, when it comes to programmatic operational elements, you're most likely to get sort of general recommendation statements. The next step, the implementation phase, is sort of the kind of how do we take this and then craft whether it's regulatory or it's service-based, what have you. That's I think where the opportunity during implementation, where you can get into regional partnerships.
Yeah, all right. I just always thought regionalization was more of the vision process, or it could be.
Yeah,
I'll stop beating that drum.
That's no, it's a good drum to beat. I mean, that's another challenge with just planning generally in Massachusetts. You know, the regional planning agencies in other states have a policy and programmatic impact on what happens in Massachusetts, and MAPC really has none. They can sort of help inform and provide data, but that's about it.
Yep.
We used to have counties.
I think we still do.
Only for law enforcement.
Yeah.
Oh, great. So with just a couple of minutes left, I want to thank you guys both for being here. Are there any kind of last things that you want to leave us with and parting wisdom?
Yeah, no parting wisdom. Sorry, it's too early. I'm not having enough coffee. But I just to hit it one more time, please engage in the process if you're confused or like having difficulty engaging. Don't hesitate to call me or Lauren Drago, who's the assistant principal planner. And again, please share out this information to anybody in your networks. It's never too early to get engaged in this process. There'll be iterative opportunities to do so.
Absolutely. I think just a piece of wisdom an ancient philosopher once said. But I think to speak to how I think the chamber, the relationship with City Hall is. We see you guys as a partner in these processes, and I think in general. And I really want to kind of extend an invitation to be part of City Hall in a way that you guys can talk to us and call us and have that close relationship, because our capacity only goes so far. We are a certain number of people that work in that building for a certain number of hours a day. It's these partnerships that are going to drive these types of programs forward, and these are great programs, and they sound great, and there's a lot of great stuff there, but they don't work until we make them work. So it's with you guys and us together we can do it. Thank you.
Great.
All right. Thank you very much.
Closing remarks, Glenn?
Well, no, as co-chair, since I talk more, you get to make the closing remarks.
All right, well, I'll keep it brief. I want to thank everybody for joining us virtually and in person, and I certainly want to thank our representatives from the city for informing us. Again, to stress the theme of partnership. And there's John Dolan from St. Mary's. Forward, always forward. In the scriptures.
And on Tuesday, the 17th, we're going to be having our government affairs meeting. This is a legislative update from Senator Creighton and the reps Capano, Cahill. We might get Don Long in as well. Swampscott, I believe she is actively resigned,
How can you actively resign?
Well, I didn't know if it was like a pending resignation, but yeah, they're not going to have a new rep until November. So that's not a current pool of representation. But it's a good legislative update here, what the state is doing and focused on in regards to our program that's going to be at the Lynn Museum. And that messaging is going to go out probably later today or tomorrow. So you can pencil that one in. It's a little bit of a different time, but it's going to be a great event. So thank you guys all and have a good day.